Those familiar with the ever so popular Until Dawn game will no doubt feel right at home when starting the Quarry. Developed by the same developer, Supermassive Games, the Quarry leans into being a more film-like experience, ditching a lot of the mystery-solving gameplay elements center stage in Until Dawn. In its place is a more cinematic experience, though at the cost of no longer feeling like a traditional video game. The Quarry follows 9 camp counselors that find themselves stuck in the middle of the forest during their last day of summer. Without much to do in the middle of the woods, the group naturally throws a party, savoring their last day of freedom before they return back to the city and their everyday lives. Not everything is as it seems though, and things quickly go bump in the night. The results of how the night goes, who and if anyone were to survive, are completely based on your choices and reactions. The star-studded cast is filled with plenty of familiar faces like Justice Smith from Detective Pikachu, Brenda Song from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and even the horror movie famous David Arquette. The actor-to-character scenarios feel perfect, especially when just about everyone in the cast has had some sort of horror show or movie-like experience. The actual plot is filled with some fun twists and turns that no doubt come from the writing experience Supermassive has garnered from working on Until Dawn and the Dark Picture anthology. Throughout various points in its storyline, the Quarry feels like it's taking a spin on the Friday the 13th series or even the Scream series, only further backed up by its choice in setting and casting. However, even when things get truly horrifying for these characters, it can at times feel like they're disconnected or somewhat numb to the scenarios and situation. It borders the line of almost being self-aware or even a parody. Not completely, but to the extent that something feels like these characters aren't really present in what's happening. All in all, while I would have liked the characters to feel more grounded in their circumstances or at least aware of what's going on, at least when it came to reacting to things, it's easily apparent that with every new take at this interactive cinematic horror genre, Supermassive has gotten better with their writing. As I mentioned previously, there isn't much to the gameplay for the Quarry. Prior releases from Supermassive struck a balance between navigating mysteries and puzzles that felt entwined with the narrative. While there are moments of exploration and wandering in the Quarry, they never felt all that compelling or vital to the story. Instead, they came off more like stopgaps in between large sprawls of cutscenes with minimal interactions at best. These interactions usually come in the form of a timely press QuickTime event, or a time-based decision that branches toward a different narrative path. This iteration of the gameplay feels more like a film than a video game, which says a lot when there's actually a dedicated movie mode that essentially cuts the decisions out of the gameplay. While it does make the experience faster paced, there are also major moments story-wise that get completely cut out entirely. While having the option to experience this solely as a movie is a nice option, and especially for those that are looking for more accessible options to play, it also comes off a bit disheartening when the game already feels like it leans into being more of a film than just a video game. There is some replay value in the fact that you can go back and choose alternate routes and thus end up in a completely different surviving cast. The hurdle there though is that you can't skip cutscenes. This means that going back to the last major decision also means going back to a few minor ones that you'll have to completely rewatch without the option to skip unless you've already beaten the game. The Quarry is a beautifully animated cinematic experience. It stands toe-to-toe with Supermassive's prior games and other narrative-driven adventure games in the genre. The cast of characters are captured marvelously well, from the little idiosyncrasies and facial expressions to their voice acting and actions. The only thing I had a big gripe with when it came to performance capture were the eyes of the characters. So frequently I came across moments where the eyes of characters just looked soulless or even like they weren't looking at the subject they were speaking to. I did really love the frame choicing though. So often the game would position the camera in unique shots for a video game that are more common in a film, like an unsuspecting stalker lurking behind the character you're in control of. I thought those were fantastic artistic, stylistic choices. In terms of performance, the resolution ranges from 1440p to 4K depending if you're on an Xbox Series S, to the even higher end Xbox Series X and PS5. The resolution is a bit off though because of the black bars always present on screen, lending to a more film-like experience. Part of that experience is also limiting the frame rate to 30 FPS on console, which seems like a more stylistic choice rather than a processing power one. If you do decide to play this on PC, however, expect a very demanding experience if you're trying to run this on max settings. With just about every cast member here coming from some sort of moving acting background, I'm happy to say that, for the most part, the cast nailed the voice acting work. Brenda Song's and Justice Smith's character particularly stood out to me for capturing their little nuances in their performance, like a subtle change in tone when choosing to be flirty instead of sarcastic in a choice option. The soundtrack varies depending on whether you choose to play with licensed or non-licensed music. I love that the developers thought ahead and offered both options for those that want to stream this game without getting content ID'd for the music. Between the two, I enjoyed the licensed music a lot more though, partially because licensed music just feels so integral to a lot of horror films, and it feels like it completes the experience here. The Quarry is easily one of the best written cinematic experiences to come out of developer Supermassive Games. It's been apparent that the studio has had a knack for this genre of interactive cinema for quite a while now, and they're firing on all cylinders with this iteration's narrative design. However, as far as traditional games go, it's also the most disconnected and distant one when it comes to gameplay. The gameplay feels non-existent at times, and while the story and characters are noticeably elevated with this title, it shouldn't come at the cost of the interaction elements that make these cinematic games all the more exciting and, frankly, fun to play with friends. Regardless, there is no doubt in my mind that The Quarry is Supermassive's best story to date and easily a must-have for fans of the genre. However, if you already weren't super hot with this genre and were expecting or hoping that this would change that, I wouldn't assume so.